We're going to start recording right now.
Okay. Okay, so first item on the agenda, announcements, open session, public comments. Do we have any announcements from anyone? Any public comments? David, anything you wanted to share with us at the beginning of the meeting?
I just really want to observe for the most part, I think, and just kind of get a handle as to where we're at with everything. Is there any opportunity after I hear some of the discussion to be able to speak, or is it only this time that I can speak?
Well, it's the open session is meant for guests to speak, and then you can join in the conversation as we go along.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you'd like to say something now, by all means, and then you can join in as we go along.
Well, I'd like to start by saying that the other morning when I came down to check on my vessel, and I saw the fuel dock being removed and everything being taken out of the water, it took me back a little bit, and I was just concerned a bit as to why this was happening so quickly. But I never really got a chance. I didn't get a chance to talk to Will because he was busy in a meeting, and I'm sure that's all part of it. But I think the outfall, I came on the next day, and there were several slip owners and boat owners who seemed pretty upset over the fact that they didn't get any notification on any of this, that this all came about almost overnight. And, if there are some justifications for it, I'm all ears. I don't know if it could have been done any differently. So I'm certainly, going to reserve my judgment on why it occurred as quickly as it did until I hear. But I think that's one concern that I want to share with everybody as a result of it. A second thing is within the town, I just want to bring up the point of the pilings. I wanted some clarification on what's being replaced, the quality of the pilings that are going to be replaced, who's replacing them, what it's going to cost the town, etc. I think that's enough to go on now, and maybe I can ask other questions if people are willing to discuss that.
Okay, before we move on, I think we have another guest. Jasmine Liu, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on, but I'm covering this with the Provincetown Independent, so I don't really have much comment. I'm just here to hang out.
All right,
Nice to
well,
meet you.
welcome. Okay, Chris.
Okay, move on. Just to confirm the roll call and the fact that we do have a quorum. So myself, Joe, Skip, Kevin, and Alfred for the DTF. Next item is to
Kevin is also on.
yes.
Okay.
Next item is to review and approve the notes of meeting from our last meeting, which was held September the 13th. So if you guys would just take a minute to review them, and then we can entertain a motion to accept.
No.
Okay, people ready to make a motion?
Just minutes from 9/13/2021.
Correct.
I make a motion that the minutes of 9/13/2021 be accepted as written.
I second that motion.
Kevin? Okay, go to the vote. Alfred?
Aye.
Kurt's still not on, right? Kevin?
Aye.
Skip?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Chris? Also aye. So minutes are accepted 5-0. Let's move on then to the status of the 2021 dredging contract and the start of the actual dredging work itself. Will, you want to start us off with a recent update, if you would, please?
Sure. Today we sent out the notice to proceed early to get the dredge company in there early and to start the process going. So that's all signed and sent out to them, and they will be arriving very shortly.
As in before the sun comes up?
Probably before the sun goes down tomorrow.
Okay.
And then they can get to work, get started a little bit early. And then not waste the weather.
So just a few details. We did have the kickoff meeting with the contractor last Friday down at the pier. Good discussion, and they're, as Will pointed out, they're anxious to get going. They'll bring their equipment in, do some prep work, and be ready to start digging on October 1st, which is the first day they can dredge based on the permits. What they did say is, and they're bringing 2 dredges, they're going to work on the rising tide. So they'll use the water, the incoming water, keep their scows afloat, fill them up, and then outside the dredging time, and also simultaneous with it, they'll haul out to the disposal site. They're going to have 3 scows, and as I said, 2 dredges. Each scow is nominally 2,000 cubic yards. So essentially, each dredge fills up 1 scow during the rising tide. They'll be a little bit slightly under 2,000 yards. So they plan to average about 2,500 yards per 24 hours. It'll vary a little bit with the tide cycle. But that's good. A straight line production rate would be 1625. So they're shooting to get well above that, which is good. Builds a little lagniappe into the schedule.
And they're working 24/7, right?
Yes, they'll be hauling 24/7, and they'll be digging commensurate with the rising tide.
Uh-huh.
Anything else on dredging?
We also learned in that very good meeting with the contractor that the contractor stated that he would be willing to install the new pilings. So I think you saw the letter that I sent out was an outgrowth of a meeting we had with the town administrator and assistant town administrator last week. And I haven't gotten a response today, but the deadline is Friday to get on the agenda for the special town meeting. Does anybody have any questions? about that and the content of the letter? Kevin?
My question is, I thought we had already talked about this back like 5, 6 months ago when we were talking to Alfred about how to put the pilings in, and this was gonna be a big process, and ordering the pilings and and seeing what their costs would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I thought it was all part of what we were gonna do, replace broken in bad pilings. So I'm a little miffed at this.
Well, that discussion after it ended didn't really get a lot of traction. And the focus was totally on dredging.
Well, the issue, and you can go back to the minutes of the meeting, was there were no funds for it. Piling replacement is not part of dredging, and there were no funds. And that's why it didn't go anywhere, Kevin. You can go back and look at the minutes of meeting.
Yeah, that's the way I understood.
Yeah,
I have a question for Will.
he's muted. Hold on just a minute. I'm trying to unmute him. Just before Alfred, let me just quickly respond to what Chris said. I don't agree that it's not a part of dredging. That's why I raised it and pushed it and advocated for it in the spring. If you talk to boaters, when they're looking at the whole picture with a broader vision of the dredging project, they're very much considering it part of the whole project.
I'll clarify. When I said it wasn't part of dredging, it's not part of the funds that have been approved for dredging.
Okay.
It was actually bond count. It was bond council that denied that it was part of dredging.
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
And at that time, I had gotten that opinion from Harry Turkanian that the monies in the dredging fund could not be used for the filings. But then discovered recently when I brought it up again, that there was an avenue to utilize those funds. And as you saw in the letter, the article can be amended. Alfred, you had a comment.
I had a question for Will. At the meeting with AGM and Burnham, AGM said that they would replace the pilings, the rotten, non-pressure treated pilings, if we supplied the pilings. Is that correct?
that's correct. The rotten ones that are going to crush in the hammer.
So there's like 30 of them. Well, it doesn't matter how many. My question is, and this is a concern with Joe's letter, is that the ones that are completely missing, they're not contracted to put back. Is that correct?
Nope.
So if we're looking for funding to do this, we're also going to look for funding to pay them an amount of money, which I don't know, to install the pilings that are completely missing. Is that correct? If we're going to have all new pilings? Excuse me, because we're not replacing the pressure treated pilings. Is that correct?
Nope. The pressure treated pilings were rated as good by them.
Okay, so my question is, if there is, and I'm using numbers that don't matter for discussion, if there are 20 bad pilings that they're going to replace if we supply them with new ones, and if there's 10 pilings missing after that, it would be our cost for the piling plus resetting it. Would that be true? For the extra 10.
I would assume that any other piling than the ones that would be destroyed that they talked about would be have to be contract and bidded out.
Okay, so my question to that is, or to Joe, is in the language that you drafted was only for the pilings themselves to replace in my opinion, I think it's short. I think what's not going to be there is if we were to buy all the pylons, we're not going to have the funding to have the additional pylon set that are not being removed. Would that be correct, Will?
Yes, because the agreement with them, with Burnham and, was that they would replace the destroyed pilings. They were not replacing with new ones if we were to supply them. They were not going to replace sustainable pilings. So that offer wasn't even on the table by them, and the amount that was offered was approximately just under 30 pilings.
Yeah,
Right, Matt.
at the meeting, the guy, I was standing next to him, he said 40. What I did, Alfred, to answer your question, I simply counted them, all of them, including the ones that were missing, and came up with 49.
Okay, I don't, the number's not as critical, Joe, in my opinion, because I don't think that the way you're looking at the article for the funding is going to get us the latitude that may be needed to pay them to put the additional pilings in that they're not taking out.
Well, I mean, the letter was left with open end, that we would provide that information as a group.
No, I don't disagree. That's why that's my concern.
Yeah.
Do you understand my concern? Because
Oh, I do.
because if they're gonna if they can do this as a add-on at whatever rate they're gonna tell us, which may or may not be what we're willing to spend, I don't think that the way we've looked at it, that additional expenditure is accounted in that letter. That's all. So I think that letter, if it's going to be sent off, needs some type of language so that we are also using money for the remaining pilings to be bought and installed that are not part of the contract.
My thinking was that when we get a response to that letter, if it's to proceed with the research and a plan, that what you're saying, Alfred, would then be incorporated in that. And that's what we would come back with.
I mean, they may want more money than it's worth to drive those additional pilings. But my problem is if we don't have the latitude to pay them, we're only going to get what's broken.
Well, it would seem that, if that's the case, we would have to ask for sufficient funds to cover what you're talking about.
I don't disagree. That's why I'm saying that I think we're going to end if the town decides to put new pilings in, which they should if we're going to get them driven for nothing, and all we have to do is buy the actual pylon. The question is, isn't it worth finding out, entertaining what they're going to charge us to put a complete pylon?
But we'd also be looking at a substantial amount of money that would probably have to be procured through a proper process.
Well, we need an avenue though to be able to spend it, Will. I mean, even if it's only $10, we need an avenue to be able to spend something that wasn't allocated. If we had a line, we could ask to fill it with more, but we do not have a line, unless I'm wrong, to say that, by the way, we want you to start driving pylons.
Yeah, no, we have money for dredging.
But we can.
We have money for a lot of dredging work that's rapidly being consumed for that purpose. And now we're asking to reallocate those funds for a different purpose. And what we're being offered right now is an exchange for us buying a product. When what Joe is asking for and you're asking for is to actually procure a service instead of just replacing a product from a bad one for a good one. Almost looking a gift horse in the mouth and taking this up to a whole nother level.
Why are we looking at gift horse in the mouth? It's in the contract, isn't it?
For those pilings that they're doing, yes,
So
but
wouldn't it-
not an additional double that amount into procuring a service
Well, we
with,
don't know.
trying
We
to
don't-
Well, we're not doubling the amount. The contractor said 40.
No, he did not.
Well, I was standing next to him and I heard him say 40.
I don't have the exact numbers either in front of me, but as I recall, there were 40 some odd piles he was going to pull. And I seem to recall, he said, and about 20 of those are too deteriorated. They cannot go back in as is.
Yeah, that's pretty much the meeting I had with all of them afterwards, after we went over all the logistics, but hey, what do I know? But, aside from that, we are going back to town meeting. I mean, here we are trying to use these funds for more and more and more, and these funds were allocated despite the many attempts to use these funds for everything else in the harbor. Here we are, we're also going to be telling the taxpayers that we're coming back for another 10 to 13 million to finish our dredging project. Where are we going here? Why do we keep taking it to the taxpayers on the chin? Because we want more and more and more. These funds
Well,
are put aside for
our-
dredging. That's what they
our-
should be
our-
used for.
Our mission as a committee, like all of the other committees in town, is the same. We do the research, we develop a plan, and we make a recommendation. It is not our charge to figure out the funding and what the taxpayers are thinking and which way they're going to go. That's up to town government and the taxpayers. So if we present them with a package of need and demonstrate that need, then the taxpayers and town government are going to say yes or no. And if they say yes, they're going to figure out, what has to be spent. I mean, we're looking for a pretty small amount compared to the millions of dollars. And if everybody doesn't agree that's an essential need, then we should discuss that now.
Well, it's getting a little bit of scope creep. I mean, originally it was for the piles that they're going to pull that cannot be reinstalled because they're too badly deteriorated. If we supplied the new piles, he would drive them, and as part of his scope. So if that pile count is increasing, including for missing piles, which requires services for the installation above and beyond what's in his scope, maybe the article should just be a standalone articulating what is envisioned and characterized as piling replacement. And it's not dredging per se. It's not part of what the funds for dredging have been approved for, but the article could be very specific for piling replacement and the proper details in terms of estimated count and estimated cost.
I think
it has to be its own article. It might as well just be its own article.
Well, when I discussed it with Harry Turkanian, gave him all the information, he recommended that we simply seek to amend the original article for a set amount for certain services. But maybe we should discuss now everybody's thoughts about, the pilings, what should be replaced, what can be reused, and so forth. Alfred, do you have a thought on that?
I don't think that's up to us, really. I mean, the dredging, this is about the dredging and what the contractor is willing to replace for us right now. That's what they're willing to do. And the number was in the 20s. The number wasn't in the 40s.
That's because they're going to use some of the old pilings. Is that not correct?
That's correct. Yeah, because they
wouldn't-
said they were good.
And that's my question. Do we as a group really want the old pilings reinstalled?
Well, if they say they're good, I mean, but who are they? I mean, they do this every day, so.
But they're not pressure treated, are they?
You'd have to ask them the exact specifics. Again, I'm not a piling expert, but I think
Okay.
that they might be, considering that they do this every single day.
Yeah. I mean, the reason it got glommed onto dredging is because they're pulling some out to facilitate dredging, and then they're putting them back in. You know, it's now, unfortunately, some of them are very badly deteriorated, and they pointed that out to us and offered that if we provided the new piles, materials only, that they would drive them as part of the reinstallation. So that's the narrow guidelines that keep it within the traces of the current contract. So essentially, the easiest thing for that is we would need a little bit of money to buy approximately 20 piles, maybe 30, have some spares in case they break.
So
But
Chris,
that gets us go ahead.
Chris, the 2 grants that we got, are those grants available to have something like pilings part of it?
In a subsequent grant application, yes.
Oh, a subsequent, they can't be the ones.
Yeah,
that are-
SEC, yeah. Yeah, no, neither one of those grants envisions piling replacement. Now, if you're doing a whole scale pile replacement, an SEC grant, if successful, would cover 80% of the cost of the piling work, the piling replacement work.
We also have lead time and availability too of the product.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, to keep it as close as possible to the current scope, both in terms of contract and the 2 grants, it would be come up with the lowest additional cost, which is buying approximately 20 piles. Down the road, for any harbor improvements, including piling replacement, that could be the subject of a separate SEC grant application.
How long would it take to process an SEC grant application? Is the timeline matching with this whole project?
Well, the application is due November 1st. The awards are made in February.
And
Well,
that's,
then that's not going to make any sense as far as, I don't see anybody wanting to get into a situation where you have a dredged, the dredging completed and that there's still pilings that are missing.
Well, there's the pilings are its own topic.
I mean, is there any way that there is a potential to amend some of the requests for this special town meeting coming up to avert some of this so that we can think ahead of the game rather than put ourselves behind the 8 ball and then say, oh, well, now we have to wait another year before we can get money for pilings. It just seems as
That
if
was the intent, that was the intent of my letter after talking to Harry about amending the original article. Now, my question at this point is, do we agree that some of the piles can be reinstalled? We want that. Alfred, you're probably the one who's most familiar with the quality of pilings. Do you agree that some should be reinstalled?
I think that I would be opposed to that because you're going to have to pay somebody to take them out and put them back in. The reason that I believe...
No, but we're not paying anyone to take them out or put them back in. They're actually doing that on their own.
Yes, but if the piling hasn't got a very long life expectancy to it, Will.
Well, they said it was, and I mean, if they say it is, and they do this Alfred, do you do this every day? Do you do piling work every day?
It's not worth the argument, Will.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought we were just discussing facts.
I think
Sorry.
No, I mean, I know that the pilings that are not pressure treated are not going to last as long as a pressure treated piling. We all know that.
So the ones that they're putting in, that was Joe's question, the ones that they're going to put back in that were still good, and they're doing this at their own cost because that's what they wanted to do for their work. We shouldn't let them put the pilings that we have back in that are still good.
Well,
should
we
let them-
don't know the quality of them and how long they're going to last. I mean, they already have some age on them, is what Alfred is saying.
Actually, he said they were no good. They'd be no good. So we wouldn't be able to tell. But certainly that contractor who does this every day and is somewhat more of an expert than anyone here at this would know.
Well, I think a question for the contractor would be, they're good. That's a pretty broad term. Are we going to get 5 years out of them? Are we going to get 10?
But it
You know-
doesn't matter because they are paying for it. It's not costing us anything.
Well, if they
Well, I'm
only last
trying to
5
look-
years,
Well, I tell you what we do. Go ahead, David. Did you want to
I
speak?
was just gonna say, if they only last 5 years, then we are paying for it because ultimately we have to pay when the dredges are gone to hire someone to replace the pilings that have failed.
Which we will have to
Hold up.
pay anyway.
Yeah,
no,
I mean, one comparative view is that, we go ahead with the contractor and he replaces, reuses as many as he can, reduce the cost, and then in the future, a much more comprehensive plan, including any missing pilings and/or any changes to a piling layout design and any other dock-related things could all be part of a infrastructure grant application.
With a whole new project without having pilings replaced for this boating season coming.
Well, we would end up at the end of this process with exactly what we have now, yes. The nubbins would be gone. We'd have the same number of piles as we have now. Presumably some of them would be new and some of them would be reused. But so far as the pile count, it would be no better or no worse than what's out there right now.
It would be better because they'd be replacing the 8 nubbins as well.
Yeah.
Well, my only thought is looking at it, from the boater's perspective, this is a $20 million project. The expectations are that everything is going to be, up to snuff where it should be for a modern harbor after all of that money and work. And why not get good pilings in there that are going to last?
Well, why don't we just put the docks in that too?
Yeah, I don't know why the expectations would be that the facilities and the infrastructure is going to get a makeover. I think the dredging discussions have been very specific. So granted, everyone would like everything new and fresh, and I agree, but we're very restricted by funding.
But we
Yeah, I
have a
think-
contractor right there. We're not restricted by funding. If we take a small amount, amend the article, take a small amount from that 2-point-something million with a contractor right there who's willing to do it. Why not get it done?
Who said the contractor is even willing to do it?
Well, he said he was willing to do some, and I'm
Yeah.
sure for an additional fee while he's already there, he would be willing to do it. They're in the business to make money. Alfred, do you follow that or do you disagree with that?
I'm bewildered.
What are you
So, like-
bewildered about?
I mean, each time they've dredged in the past, when they've done, all the pilings have been fixed. But that's, and whether or not AGM or the other one is willing to do it or not do it is certainly a discussion. But if they are willing to do it, and we could afford it, if we don't put something on town meeting, we're out of luck. So I guess
Right.
that's where we're at.
Right, I agree with that.
Well,
So it's primarily obviously a funding question in largely. Joe had sent a letter to Charlie and I'm sure he's reviewing it. So we'll have to hear back on what the administrative options are.
okay.
Chris, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
What would be the detriment to the current funding that we have if we did present that to town meeting?
You mean to seek permission to use it?
Yes, and what would,
Well, just.
what's the outfall, I guess?
Yeah, well, just a few things. If it gets approved, it gets approved. The bond issue was very specific for dredging. This would be outside that and therefore would require that. The bond issue that was approved for dredging ultimately will have to be refreshed and upgraded just for dredging alone. So to link infrastructure to it just exacerbates the situation. The infrastructure funding could be its own topic, its own article, and with a long-term plan could actually be funded by other grants. So no one wants to wait an extra year, I get that, but there would be funding available for an SEC grant.
But when we talk about funding, we're probably talking about $150,000 or so, out of a fund that is at 2.9 million allocated for dredging. We're not talking about a lot of money, and we can't do a separate article as we covered with Charlie in the TA meeting because he's doubtful about any free cash being available. That was the attractiveness of simply taking a couple of $100,000 out of the present fund. And I think the person in town who's voting on it would have the perception that pilings are an important part of the finished product.
So are you gonna add docks to this as well?
No, we've only mentioned pilings.
Because they're not important?
Of course they're important.
Oh, okay. Just
But
checking.
you said at the Marina meeting, you were going to replace D&E over the winter.
Yeah, we're gonna try. I was hoping to already be starting that, but getting the boats out seems to be a little tough past our September deadline. Mid-September deadline. I was hoping to already be on that project, but.
Yeah, this discussion is focused entirely on pilings.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was what the boaters expected, as you just put it.
Well, they expect deep water, they expect pilings, they expect good docks, and you indicated that you're going to make every effort over the winter to replace the last two sections. So that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully we won't be held up by anything with that either.
So again, I think this hinges largely on the administrative options that are available to us. So I don't know if we'll make any more progress tonight, but we do need to get guidance from Charlie.
Yeah, we have to wait for a response. I just have one question for everybody. Is there anybody here who would support waiting, another year, and then having to replace those that are put back in the near future?
I would support waiting, replacing the minimal, as I described, and I would support waiting so that we have a comprehensive plan for piling and the opportunity to get grant money. I think a comprehensive plan for piling would probably result in a overall higher cost because I think it would result in more pilings than what we're talking about even here. So, and if there were going to be other upgrades at that same time, it would make sense to implement them from a construction standpoint while we do additional piling work. Again, there would be grant money available, and that's the appeal to me.
So what does the voter who's paying $2,000 or more for a slip or a fairly short season do when the pilings start to disintegrate?
Well, under the scenario I just described, it would be identical to what they did this year because the pilings would be identical.
Except for the new replacements. I'm at 100% agreement with Chris that the marina needs a comprehensive plan for growth and management. And pilings and docks all fit with one another, especially if we can put fingers to those boaters that do have one of the cheapest marinas on Cape Cod. If we could give them a better product and planned it out with grant money, they would be getting a better product than the previous Band-Aids that Wellfleet, that they've gotten in Wellfleet. So instead of band-aiding problems, I think we should comprehensively plan out for the future.
Plus the fact that you have already, we've got a great plan for doing the dredging once we get these boats out of there. So that, and some of the moorings, that at least the people that are boating would be happy to have the extra hours on each side of the tide, because it's now another 6 feet down below the current level, or even more because the amount of sludge that we got in there. So I think a one overall plan of floats and docks and pilings is the better way to go, even if it takes us another year to actually put that before the town.
When we had a meeting with the engineer a while back, the question was asked about the cost of a good quality piling with installation. And, you know, he came up with a figure of about $2,500. And that comes out, you know, for 40 of them to about, let's see, around $100,000.
Yeah, I think a comprehensive plan, though, would end up with more than that because I think there are quite a few missing, even beyond 40. I think the final count, including missing and nubbins and deteriorated ones, as I recall, would be closer to 100. But I've not counted them lately, so if there truly is a different number, I'll stand corrected.
Well, what do the voters here think? Any thoughts?
Got a hand up here with Charles Fraser.
Yeah. He's muted and I've asked him to unmute. Charles Fraser, are you on?
I believe I hit that by mistake. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. You're muted again. I'm going to click again to unmute. Charlie Fraser? No, he's muted again.
Am I required to be unmuted?
You're unmuted now, yes.
Am I required to do so?
You have to, well, if you have a comment.
No, I don't.
Oh, then
I
you
just-
don't have to.
Right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
somebody here thought you had your hand up.
No, it was an error.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any voters have any thoughts?
I have a question. So the thought is that, again, I'm a little confused. They're gonna replace the 20 that are bad with 20 that we buy. So we're gonna be out for the cost of 20 pilings, maybe 30, like Chris said, for broken ones. And what Joe, your letter said is you want to replace all the pilings, which would equal 40 or 50?
Yes, 40. I counted 40. I didn't go into the A section.
And there's no estimate or thought on what they would charge us for the additional 30, correct? Or 20?
Well, they said they were going to replace 20, which I
Right.
believe they said was part of their contract.
Right. but the additional 30 we would have to pay for if they would do them anyhow.
If they would do them, and that's what we're recommending.
So if that happens, the way that I understand it, we'd have to ask the town to amend the dredging to include pilings.
No, we would ask the town at town meeting to amend the article that passed allocating the dredging funds to take some of that money and to use specifically for pilings.
Okay.
The article would be, the request would be limited very strictly to that. That's what voters would be seeing.
So it'd be pilings purchased plus the resource of the dredging company to put them in place.
Well, they're going to do 20 as part of their contract.
I'm talking about the additional 30.
Yes, the additional, well, I counted 40, so it would be an additional 20. You know, it's been suggested when you're ordering them, you have some spares.
Oh, so now it could be 25 extras.
No. I counted 40 total, okay?
So it could be 45.
The
the extras.
The contractor said he's going to replace the labor for 20. That would leave another 20.
Oh, so it's only 20 more that have to be purchased and put in place.
Well, we would have to purchase the ones that he's going to put in place unless he's going to use some of the old ones.
And then these 20 that we would purchase and they would be put in, would we be paying for putting those in, or is this the free ride that?
We'd have to pay the contractor.
So it's more than 2,500 estimated per piling to get it in place.
Well, no, the estimate we got from the engineer included the installation cost.
Got it. Thank you.
And Chris, you said it would be definitely more expensive on the grant end of it, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again, Kevin?
When you was talking about the grant, it would
Right.
be definitely more expensive. That if you went through the grant process. Because they
Well,
would have to come in with the machinery and everything.
Yeah, if you're doing a comprehensive plan, it would be in the future, it would be MOB. The grant, when successful, pays 80% of the total cost. So again, my view is instead of piecemealing everything together with no funding, let's do a comprehensive plan that is eligible for 80% funding. And it would be piling replacement and perhaps some other upgrades to the docks. And just instead of just poke and hope, we would actually have a comprehensive plan and get funding for it.
But we'd have nothing to lose by putting something before town council and the town. And if they said yes, then we could get it done, and then we could still apply for the grant if they said no.
Yes, they'll cover infrastructure, they'll cover docks and stuff.
Yeah,
They have the money.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Mhm.
So if we do get a response from the TA that he wants to see something, he wants to see a proposal, what are your thoughts? Anybody and everybody? Kevin, you just expressed yours.
If we can't get an amendment, then we go with the grant funding.
Mhm.
And I was looking for a more comprehensive plan. If you're gonna start dribbling it a little bit at a time, a comprehensive plan might be a sharper looking product at the end when you put the dredging and then a comprehensive plan of floats, pilings, and maybe layout of some type.
Uh-huh. Alfred, your thoughts?
I'm waiting to see what Charlie says.
Charlie asked to be, he has muted himself.
I think he means Charlie Sumner.
Oh, okay. Okay. Shall we
I
move
mean,
on?
you might be able to put another string on the advance more floats and pilings up, coming up where there's two moorings that are in the way, but you could come that way. You might be able to add more possibilities for people for slips.
Could you run that again, Skip?
Okay, on the east side of the slip, or the mooring area on the east side of the floats, there's east and west slips, but they end,
What sections are you talking about, Skip?
the one on the east side, that's the ocean side,
Yeah,
not the ones on the parking lot side that are on the outer float setup.
are you talking sections A through E?
I don't know what,
Well, that's
No,
where
I
the
think he's
bulk
talking
of,
about the extension of A.
an extension of A, yes. Having A extend toward the south, toward east end, maybe another section, or even two,
adding the section is what you're saying.
correct.
I see.
That
What are
would
you
get
gonna
more
do for those,
revenue
what are you
even.
gonna do for those people that have moorings there?
That's a good question. How come those moorings are sitting in a marina area?
Well, I mean, they're there for a reason. I think they waited to get them. They were permitted to be put in there by someone.
Well, maybe they want to slip.
Did you ask them?
No,
I think
Oh.
the point is that this is another item that might result in an upgrade to the facility. And again,
Correct.
rather than doing it piecemeal, I think it's something that could be studied and come up with a comprehensive plan.
I believe there was a plan because Jerry Bassett's father was the engineer on that job. When the pier was first built at Shirt Tail Point there. And that was the plan, was to put dockage on that side. But it just never came to fruition. That was the original plan.
Shall we move on, Chris?
Yes, I think so. Covered a lot of thoughts on that one. Move on to update on permit activity. Joe, anything new on permits and/or our lobbyist?
Well, the last movement involved representatives from our congressional delegation having a conversation with all of the information we provided to them, advocating for us with the Army Corps. And I believe that was going to be in Washington, D.C. And our lobbyist doesn't have an update from that. He was checking to see if it actually happened and what the results were going to be. So that's about it for now.
Okay. Any other business before we go on to scheduling the next meeting? Okay, I was proposing October the 18th. It's 3 weeks from now. Our normal 2-week cycle would put us on Columbus Day. So we can either go 3 weeks or we could schedule it for a day shortly after Columbus Day, whatever people feel is appropriate. So we'll start with how do people feel about the 18th of October, 3 weeks from tonight?
Looks good.
Usual time, 7 p.m.
fine with me.
Good with everyone?
Sure.
No problem here.
Okay. We can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I
Kevin,
second it.
Skip. To the vote, Alfred,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Skip,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
and Chris, aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
You too.